Hello, Elaine. So, last week we started looking at the work of Banksy. You investigated his work, you used the PowerPoint, you had a look at the online video about him and his work. So, today we're going to start having a look at his subject matter and his techniques. So one of my favourite icons of his is the rat. I think it's really humorous, but he uses it to put across his message in a way that is accessible to lots of people. I quite like the idea that it's this rat that's living in the city that is travelling around and having all these different experiences. I think it has a really interesting narrative behind it. So we're going to start looking at these, and we're going to be making a copy of one of these today. So you will have this image on the PowerPoint slide, or I will email it to you individually so everybody can see it. You're just going to need pencil and a black pens for this today. When we look at these images, you can see I've picked out these rats. They are primarily positive and negatives. You know that these were made with spray paint, they're made with stencils. Hopefully when you did your research you picked up on that, the fact that Banksy found that it was really difficult to create the effects he was looking for. Then he discovered stencils, and that was the way forward for him. So we're going to be copying this, and when we're copying it, we're looking at it as a stencil so we can work out where those positive and negative spaces are. So anything that's black would have been cut out. That's what's gone through the stencil to create the image. Anything that's white would have been paper, and that's blocked the image. So you can see quite clearly on these where the black parts have been cut out in order to create that image. So I'm going to be having a look at this little fella here, this little villain. I know he's a villain because he's got a little eye mask on, and he's trying to cut into this lock to break into this metal covering on the outside of a building. So we're looking for negative spaces. So very obviously we've got the big part here of his body, we've got the small parts of his ears, his mask, and then his metal snips here, and his arms and his hands coming out. So looking for those individual sections. So I've got the inside of his ear, and then there's like a slither down the side of his ear, and then there's a slither down that side that hooks up and round. So I'm just looking at these shapes, drawing them in. Then I've got another slither down that side, describing the other side of that ear. Then we've got his eye mask coming across this with the little ties coming down and across his eyes, and then the space for his eye socket in there, his eyeball, and then I'm just going to put in a little indication of his eye in there as well. Now then I've got his main body section where his feet, I suppose that's his tail at the back, isn't it, and his feet at the front. So it's quite simplistic, but then it needs to be for a stencil. The stencils, the more complicated you get, the more likely they are to fail. So you need to keep them quite simplified, especially when you're working on these sort of surfaces that he would be working on. It's not like working on a nice flat piece of paper. Quite often it will be derelict walls, brick walls, metal sheets. But then the paint that he uses is going to stick to most things. Bringing that around like that, putting his nostril in. Okay, and then there's just an indication so that he's got fingers there. And then the snips coming up. And then he's got his other arm, comes across here. Thumb there, and the other side of the snips coming up. Through there. It's quite clever because you get these little slithers of white showing, which just give you the form of the object. So I'm drawing them in so that I don't miss them. There's just a little indication of a line here. Okay, so that's my main shape. So I've used my fine line pen for that. I'm then going to go in with my thicker pen to start blocking in those areas. I have to say my favourite one is this one, the I'm out of bed and dressed, what more do you want? I think that's really quite applicable at the moment. If you're up and dressed and doing your lessons, well done. Okay, so hopefully we're going to get that sense of humour through this. What I like about this one is he looks like he's been caught. It's like, I wonder what he was doing when he got caught. Eating biscuits, I suspect. Not doing what he's meant to be doing. So you need to keep it quite sharp on this to the edges. He's got some little furry bits that stick out. Just notice that down that side, put them in as I block that through. And then all of this is going to be blocked in black. You can do this in colour pencil. You haven't got black felt tip pens. And the black ones are always the ones that run out first, aren't they? Black and red. And I've gone for A5 for this, so half an A4 sheet. But if you want to do it smaller than that, by all means do. Just the smaller you make it, the more fiddly it's going to be to fill in. But then it will use less felt tip pen, so that might be a plus point. And there we have it, my Banksy Rat.